Marta stood in the hallway watching her daughter-in-law Sabrina fling blouses into a half-zipped suitcase as if the fabric had personally offended her. With $60 million on the way, Sabrina said, voice bright with triumph, "We don't need extra baggage under our roof." She didn't look at Marta when she said it. She didn't have to. The point landed like a door slamming. At the kitchen threshold, Ethan, Marta's son, hovered, his expression torn between embarrassment and the giddy pull of imagined wealth. He had always been the bridge in the family, the one who smoothed rough edges. Now he looked like a man trying to decide which side of the river was greener. "Sabrina," Marta said, keeping her tone level, "we can sit down and there's nothing to discuss." Sabrina cut in, snapping a lock on the battered suitcase. "We're shopping for a bigger place. Staff quarters. If you're lucky, we'll consider you for housekeeping." The laugh that followed was brittle enough to crack. Ethan flinched. Come on," he murmured, but offered nothing stronger. He had not touched the glossy lottery ticket resting on the counter, the token of fortune they believed would rewrite their lives. He'd simply been staring at it as if staring could turn numbers into character. What neither of them knew, Marta had checked both tickets at midnight. The habit was hers ever since she'd started buying one ticket for herself and one for the young couple every week. She had read the numbers 3 times through sleep-blurry eyes, and then once again for the steadying finality of it. She knew exactly which ticket was worth a fortune and which wasn't. She hadn't woken them. She'd decided against impulse and for clarity to see who they would be before the truth moved the furniture of their lives. Now, watching Sabrina call a locksmith and talk about fresh locks by afternoon, Marta felt something inside her settle. Money does not change a person. It irrigates whatever was already planted. Ethan finally managed. "Changing the locks on Mom. Our mother," Sabrina corrected with a pleasant smile that never warmed her eyes. "And she deserves her own space for her golden years. We'll handle things here." Marta took a breath that tasted like decision. She stepped to the counter, lifted the pair of tickets, and laid them side by side. "Before I go," she said, "you should hear one thing." Sabrina folded her arms. "Spare us the guilt." "The winning numbers match this ticket," Marta said, tapping the stub with her name on it. "Yours is a nice consolation. $500. Silence has many flavors." This one began with disbelief curdled into panic and finished with a metallic aftertaste of shame. Sabrina's mouth opened, then closed. Ethan's color drained. The little boy who once hid in Marta's cardigan during thunderstorms flickered in his eyes and then vanished, replaced by a man who understood too late the weight of what he hadn't said. Marta unlocked her phone and turned the screen so they could see the official results. "Check the numbers," she added, gentle but firm. "All the numbers." Sabrina reached for the tickets with jerky hands. "No," she whispered, as if refusal could reverse arithmetic. "This can't be right." "It is," Marta said. She gathered the suitcase heavy with clothes light with sentiment and set it upright. "I'll stay at a hotel until I figure out next steps. If you need to speak with me, Ethan, you have my number." Sabrina found her voice again sharp as a pin. "You can't just walk out with our future." Marta met her gaze evenly. "I'm walking out with my coat, my name, and my peace. The future is optional." She paused at the door. The house smelled like coffee and fresh paint, the domestic notes she had helped fund when she sold her place to boost their down payment. She remembered Ethan insisting she move in just for a while, remembered cooking Sunday suppers, mending loose buttons, pretending not to notice the small ways Sabrina rearranged Marta's life to the margins. On the porch, morning light made the world too honest. Marta straightened, feeling taller than she had in years. She didn't look back. Behind her came a strangled sound from Sabrina, followed by Ethan's soft, useless wait, which drifted down the walkway and disappeared. At the curb, Marta set the suitcase beside her and breathed. The sky did not change. The street did not applaud. But inside her a hinge turned. She hadn't won a miracle, she had won clarity. She called a cab. When it pulled up, she lifted the bag herself. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Anywhere with a clean bed," Marta said, and finally let herself smile. "And a quiet door that locks from the inside." The hotel room smelled faintly of citrus cleaner and overworked air conditioning. Marta set the suitcase on the luggage rack and stood a long moment with her palms flat on the vinyl handle, as if she could steady the morning by pinning it to one place. Outside the window, a strip of highway lifted and dipped like a quiet tidal current. Cars slid by indifferent. That indifference soothed her. Indifference didn't lie. Her phone buzzed. Then again, and again. 22 missed calls, most from Ethan, some from unknown. A handful of texts piled beneath Mom. "Please pick up. I need to explain." Sabrina was upset. She didn't mean, "Where are you?" Marta let the screen dim. She poured a glass of water from the tap, took 2 slow sips, and sat on the edge of the bed. She had expected tears. Instead, she felt a clean, spare quiet inside, as if a crowded room in her chest had emptied and the windows been thrown open. Grief would come. Grief always kept its appointments. For the moment, she had air. A knock landed on the door with the tentative rhythm of regret. "Mom." "It's me." Ethan's voice muffled by the wood. He knocked again softer. "Please." She considered not answering. She considered the small boy who used to press his ear to her bedroom door during the storms to ask if the thunder had a schedule. She rose, slid the chain open the door half an arm's length. Ethan stood in the corridor in yesterday's shirt hair, crushed by anxious hands, eyes red-rimmed. "I called every chain near the house," he said, voice peeling at the edges. "Only this one had a woman named Marta check in with a single bag." "I'm not hiding," Marta said. "I'm resting." "I know." He tried to smile and failed. "May I come in 2 minutes?" She weighed the request, then unhooked the chain and stepped aside. Ethan hovered inside the doorway as if he wasn't sure he deserved floor space. "I'm sorry," he said, the words tripping over each other to escape. "What Sabrina said, what I didn't say, it was wrong. I should have stopped it." Marta folded her hands. "You didn't—" I froze. He swallowed. "Mom, the number on that ticket did something to me. It was like someone rewired my brain in an hour. I heard her talking about a bigger house, staff investments, and I thought, this is a way to fix everything. Mortgages, my student loans, the IVF we've been considering. I told myself I was being practical, but really I was being a coward." At that last word, he made a small ugly sound and stared at the carpet. The blue in the carpet had been chosen to hide stains. It swallowed his gaze. "Cowardice is a habit," Marta said. "So is courage." His head came up. "I want to break the first one." "You start by calling things what they are," Marta said, "and by accepting their cost." He nodded a jerky motion that looked like a boy learning to drive stick. "I deserve whatever anger you have." "I'm not ready for anger," Marta said. "I'm busy with boundaries." He winced but nodded again. Will you come home not to live, just to talk?" Sabrina says. "Sabrina says many things," Marta said. She also called a locksmith. Color drained from his face. "I'll cancel that." "You won't." Marta's tone stayed gentle flint underneath. "You'll let it happen, and you'll learn from the sound the new locks make when they click. That way, the lesson will be tied to a noise you won't forget." He pressed his fingers to his eyes. "I hate that you're right." "I don't need you to hate it," Marta said. "I need you to hear it." He took a breath as if he'd been underwater and finally found the surface. "Mom, about the ticket." "I know what you're going to say," Marta said. "And the answer is not a conversation we can or should have today." "I'm not asking for money," he said quickly, as if he could outrun the suspicion before it formed. "I'm asking for a chance to fix what I broke." "That chance isn't mine to hand out like a towel," Marta said. "It's something you build with time and consistency. Bring a hammer." The hint of a smile tugged one corner of his mouth. "I will." He looked toward the suitcase. "Where will you go?" "Here for now," Marta said. "Then we'll see." The hope rose too fast in his voice. He caught it and forced it back down. "I mean you." "I said what I meant," Marta said. I'm not exiling you from the possibility of a future, but you don't get a vote today." He nodded, chastened. At the door, he paused. "Sabrina wants to apologize." "I'm not ready to be her audience," Marta said. "I understand." He opened the door, then stopped again as if the threshold owed him a second thought. "Mom." "Yes." "Thank you for telling the truth." He meant the kitchen, the tickets laid side by side. He meant the past hour. He meant the hard line she'd drawn that left room on the far side for a bridge. "Go home," Marta said. "Listen to the locks." After he left, she drew the curtains against the afternoon's glare and lay back on the bed. Sleep came like a long-delayed bus, late rattling but welcome. It dropped her on the far side of dusk. She woke to her phone buzzing across the nightstand like a trapped bee. Voicemail transcriptions stacked, 3 from Ethan, 1 from a number she recognized with the special wince she reserved for dental appointments, Sabrina's work line. "I'm nearby with flowers," the voicemail read. "It would mean a lot if you opened the door." Flowers as if petals could mop a stain. The knock came before she could decide whether to pretend she wasn't there. It was brisk confidence, someone used to entry. Marta slid the chain and opened the door 2 inches. Sabrina stood in the corridor in a cream blouse, makeup applied to suggest effortlessness, a bouquet so large it half obscured her torso. "Marta," she said, voice pitched to sympathetic. "May I come in?" "No," Marta said pleasantly. "The flowers may stay out here with the industrial carpet." Sabrina's smile flickered. "I'm here to apologize." "Then apologize," Marta said. "The hallway has good acoustics." Sabrina glanced up and down the corridor as if expecting paparazzi to spring from a utility closet. "I lost my temper," she began. "I've been under stress, and when the numbers hit well, it felt like a release after years of scraping." She arranged the bouquet so that the full expensive heads faced the door's crack, as if she understood the direction sincerity was supposed to face. "I said unforgivable things. I didn't mean them." "Yes, you did," Marta said. "That's why they came out so clean." A small hard light kindled at the back of Sabrina's eyes like a match cupped against wind. "This is exactly the sort of thing Ethan and I talked about," she said, the apology tone thinning. "You interpret everything as an attack." "I interpret actions," Marta said. "Words are free, locksmiths are not." Sabrina's knuckles whitened around the bouquet's cellophane. "We're family," she said, finally, defaulting to the word that had forgiven so much in so many homes that it had worn out its souls. "Families forgive. Families also defend," Marta said. "Yours did not." Silence stretched. Finally, Sabrina exhaled through her nose, controlled. The mask returned, but more snugly. "If you want to be stubborn, she said. "Just don't mistake that for virtue." She set the bouquet carefully on the carpet, a little too hard to be pure gentleness, and turned away. Over her shoulder, she added, "The world will hear your side of things whether you like it or not. Keep your phone on." When Marta closed the door and the chain slid home, the quiet felt like something earned. She left the bouquet in the hallway. By morning, it had vanished, claimed by housekeeping or some traveler with a better use for symbolic gestures. The next afternoon, her phone lit with an unfamiliar voice that pronounced her name too smoothly. "Miss Alvarez," the woman asked, somehow turning a question mark into a wedge. "This is Harper Lang with Channel 12. We've heard rumors of a local lottery dispute. Would you like to comment?" "No," Marta said and hung up. Rumors had fast legs when someone fed them protein. She turned the phone to airplane mode, then off entirely. She made tea from the packet on the tray, drank it despite its resemblance to boiled hotel curtains, and opened the room's thin notebook to a blank page. She wrote 3 lists with deliberate pen strokes: what I will do, what I won't do, what I don't know yet. Under what I will do, she wrote sleep, eat, call Elise. She traced the last item twice, as if heavier ink could ensure courage. Under what I won't do, she wrote debate in hallways, explain my worth, hand out absolution on a schedule. Under what I don't know yet, she wrote how to claim a fortune without losing myself, where to live, how to love my son intelligently. She dialed Elise first thing in the morning, fingers remembering the number before her mind did. The phone rang once, twice. "Hey, Mom." Elise's voice carried hospital energy, brisk awake, threaded with compassion by habit and by choice. "You calling about your checkup reminder or something else?" "Something else," Marta said and told her. Elise didn't interrupt. Marta could hear the background intercom chimes, passing wheels, a soft instruction muttered to someone just off the line. When Marta finished, Elise's breath came out in a thin, controlled sound that told Marta the story had landed in the place just behind her daughter's sternum, where outrage warmed quickly. "I can be on a flight tonight," Elise said. "I have 2 weeks vacation banked they've been begging me to take." "You don't need to fly across the country," Marta said automatically, an old reflex reaching for thrift and reason. "Want and need are different," Elise said. "I want to be there. I need you to let me." Marta closed her eyes. "Gate B 8:30, she said. "I'll meet you there." They slept lightly on the first night under the same city. In the morning, Elise commandeered the desk, opened her laptop, and began a crisp, compassionate invasion of the problem. "We keep your name out of the news," she said. "We set up a trust. We find counsel who's dealt with this exact mess before, and we leave town before someone plants a camera in your soup." "Leave town?" Marta asked. "It's a red-eye to San Francisco," Elise said. "You can have my office/spare room. No one will think to look for you there unless someone tells them." "Someone like Ethan," Marta said softly. Elise's face tightened, but she didn't argue. "We brief him on a need-to-know basis. For now, he doesn't need to know." By noon, Elise had scheduled a consult with an attorney 2 towns over who specialized in lottery claims and privacy protections. At 3, they sat in a tidy conference room that smelled faintly of paper and peppermint. Miss Rowan Compact, composed the kind of woman whose bobby pins never slipped, listened without visible surprise. "You'll want a blind trust," she said, "and new contact information. Expect attention anyway. If a relative leaks, expect more." "We've already had media calls," Elisa said. Miss Rowan's pen paused mid-note. "Then you're on a clock. The trust can be established within a few days if we move quickly. Keep your location quiet. No social media, no public celebrations, no confessions to friends of friends." Marta thought of Ethan's face in the hotel doorway, the earnestness of a man interviewing for the job of son. "What about family?" "Family is the riskiest category." Miss Rowan's tone stayed neutral, not because they're bad, but because they have proximity and emotions. On the way out, Elise squeezed Marta's hand. "We're going to be okay." "Okay is a moving target," Marta said, but the contact anchored her. They packed in 40 minutes, checked out, and took the back elevator to a rideshare that smelled faintly of cinnamon gum and resignation. At the airport, Marta kept her head down while Elise watched the world with a surgeon's alertness. The flight was half empty. In the dimmed cabin, the hum of engines knitted a temporary truce with Marta's thoughts. She slept chin tilted to her shoulder and dreamed she was standing in her old backyard while someone changed the locks on the sky. She woke with a start when the plane touched down on the far coast. Elise's apartment was small, clean, and studded with the particular detritus of the overworked, neatly stacked journals, a whiteboard calendar, a row of shoes lined like polite patients against the wall. The sofa in the office unfolded into a bed with metal honesty. "It's not luxury," Elise said, "but the door locks from the inside." "That's a selling point this week," Marta said. She put her suitcase at the foot of the sofa and felt something in her spine unknot. For 2 days, Elise went to the hospital, came home and built a cellular membrane around their lives. New phone for Marta, new email, a post office box, in a neighborhood where no one knew her last name. Marta moved slowly through the apartment during the day, learning where the light paused at 10 a.m., which mug kept tea warm the longest. How the city's fog slipped its gray scarf through the open window and left the room smelling of salt. On the third morning, the membrane tore. Marta's old phone kept off in the bottom of her purse like a disarmed alarm vibrated insistently. She had forgotten it had a haptic setting. The screen lit with notifications that looked like hail requests for comment. "Is it true, your daughter-in-law? We have sources who confirm." She stared until the text blurred. One notification rose through the others like an oil slick, a link to a local gossip site featuring a photo from Ethan and Sabrina's wedding, Marta mid-laugh adjusting a boutonniere. The headline, "Family Lottery Rift Sources Say, Mother-in-Law Claims Winning Ticket." Elise read over her shoulder, curse words quietly precise. "Someone leaked." She scrolled. "They know about the 2-ticket tradition. And the $500 on the other stub. That's not public record." Ethan Marta asked the name a question and a defense. "Could be a friend of a friend," Elise said. "Could be Sabrina. She has motive and the social media appetite to feed this beast." Elise looked up. "We need a bigger membrane." They called Miss Rowan from the kitchen table. "You were right," Marta said simply. "I usually am when I'm being paid, miss," Rowan said dryly. "Stay put. I'll fast-track the trust. And prepare for uglier tactics. Sometimes a losing hand bluffs loud." That afternoon, a message arrived from a number Marta didn't recognize but knew immediately. "You think this buys you dignities?" the text read. "Enjoy your privacy for now." A small sour pride ran through the sentence like vinegar. It was oddly adolescent. Sabrina had always valued polish. This was something else. Rage made even expensive people messy. Marta set the phone down. "I'm not afraid," she said aloud, curious to test the sentence in air. It felt true enough to stand without wobbles. "You're allowed to be," Elise said. "I'm allowed," Marta agreed. "But I'm also allowed to refuse." By evening, the trust paperwork had arrived by secure portal. Marta read each page. When she reached the line that would assign her claim to the trust, she paused, pen hovering. Not because she doubted the wisdom, she didn't, but because she wanted to honor the pivot a woman signing, not to hide but to choose what and whom to invite. She signed. Elise countersigned where needed. Miss Rowan emailed, filed. "We'll confirm with the commission tomorrow. Keep still." The stillness lasted until morning. A courier knocked with the crisp efficiency of bad news in a suit, a notice of intent to file from an attorney representing Sabrina. The language was the legal equivalent of a shove, vague allegations about Marta's erratic behavior, concern for proper stewardship, a suggestion that temporary oversight might be required to ensure family harmony and asset integrity. Elise read it twice, then looked up with a surgeon's clean fury. "She's going to try to drag you into court." Marta laid the notice flat on the table. The paper curled a little at the edges, as if it had a memory of trees and wished to return. "Then the room I left this morning just got larger," she said. Elise opened her laptop. "I'll call Miss Rowan." "Do," Marta said. She touched the page with one finger. She thought of the locksmith's click of a bouquet left to wilt in a hallway of a son, learning the shape of his spine. Outside the window, fog unrolled over the city like an unspooling bandage. Somewhere beneath it, water kept its patient rhythms in and out, as if the bay were reminding her what bodies did when given half a chance. Tim. The phone rang. Elise answered, listened, then mouthed, "She'll handle it." When she hung up, she said Rowan will file a response. "She says not to panic. This is a shot across the bow meant to scare you into sharing." "I am scared," Marta said, because naming a thing was not the same as kneeling to it. Elise reached for her hand. "Then we'll hold the fear between us until it gets lighter." Marta nodded. She poured tea, sat and looked at the notice again. She found to her quiet surprise that beneath the fear there was room for something else, a steadiness that had begun in a hotel room off a highway when she'd written 3 lists. The steadiness said, "You have a door, you have a lock, you get to choose who enters." She lifted her cup. "To choices," she said. Elise clinked hers against it, "to better ones." By evening, the sun broke through long enough to turn a window across the alley into a square of gold. Marta stood in that square as if it were a stage light and practiced a sentence she might need soon. "No," she said, trying it in different tones. "No, thank you. No, not anymore. No, I won't be meeting with you without counsel." Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Ethan. "I'm so sorry about the article. I think Caleb talked to his wife and she's a producer. I messed up again. Please forgive me. Also, Sabrina's meeting with a lawyer tomorrow. She's serious." Marta typed back, "Thank you for telling me. I am safe. I will let you know what I need when I know. She hesitated, then added, I love you. That is not a transaction. 3 dots pulsed. I love you too. I'm getting out, Mom. I don't know how yet, but I am. She put the phone down and leaned her hip against the counter. Outside, the city was finding its evening. Somewhere sirens were telling their practice story. Somewhere a locksmith was teaching someone the sound of consequence. In Marta's chest, a hinge that had started to turn kept turning. The notice lay on the table, a thin piece of theater in legal prose. Miss Rowan would draft replies. Elise would book flights if needed. Choices would be made. Locks would click. The morning money spoke had passed. Afternoon had arrived, and with it the work of learning a new language, not just how to say no, but how to mean it with a life. The next knock on the door was gentle Elise, back from the corner market with a loaf of bread and 2 apricots that smelled like summer. Dinner, she said, and news. What kind? The kind with a court date, Elise said. Preliminary. 2 weeks. Marta exhaled. The air went out, and when it came back in, it brought room. All right, she said, hearing how different it sounded from okay. Then we'll prepare. And Elise set the fruit on the counter, a small, ordinary brightness. The apricots glowed, the bay breathed, the hinge turned, and somewhere across the country, a woman who liked cream blouses and locksmiths drafted a petition she believed would make the world bend. It would not. But Marta would let her try, and in the trying, learn just how strong the new lock had become. The 2 weeks between the notice and the hearing were the kind of long that makes clocks dishonest. Miss Rowan turned Marta's days into checklists, scan, sign, notarize, breathe. Elise turned evenings into practice mock questions at the kitchen table, pauses where panic liked to hide a metronome of answer what's asked no more. Some nights Marta slept like a stone at the bottom of a river. Others she watched the fog crawl down the hill and thought of locks. The headlines moved from rumor to narrative. A local station ran a segment with a soft focus shot of Sabrina on a park bench, fingers laced like prayer. We just want what's best for Mom, she said, the mom landing with the weight of entitlement. Anonymous commenters filled the rest with certainty they hadn't earned. Miss Rowan's paralegal printed the slander and tucked it into a tabbed binder labeled Exhibit Media Harassment in neat block letters. Do we fight the story? Elise asked. We beat the petition, Miss Rowan said. Stories tire out when courts don't bend to them. The strategy felt like a spine Marta could borrow. She carried the binder once, felt its weight, and handed it back. I'll carry myself, she said. Miss Rowan nodded, satisfied. On the last evening, Ethan texted a photo of a signed separation agreement. I'll testify if you need me. I'm done hiding Mom. Marta stared at the screen until the words steadied into meaning. We do need you, she typed back. Tell the truth and go home. Let the truth do its work there too. They flew back under names that matched their IDs but wore the anonymity of early flights in dark suits. Miss Rowan met them at a quiet hotel with a folder of schedules and an admonition reporters camp at the main entrance. We go in through the employee corridor, speak to no one without me. She looked at Elise. You'll testify as a treating physician. I'm not treating, Elise said, but I can offer a professional assessment based on daily observation. Good, Miss Rowan said. Clear boundaries win cases too. Morning arrived clean and without mercy. The courthouse steps glittered with cameras. A producer with 2 white teeth called Marta's name as if they were neighbors. Miss Rowan's hand was a small firm pressure at her elbow. They slipped through a side door that smelled of lemon cleaner and old linoleum. A bailiff glanced up, checked names, and nodded them past. The courtroom itself was smaller than television pretends, fluorescent light flattening everyone into the same species of nervous. The judge, Honorable Priya Patel, sat with a stillness that read as intelligence instead of fatigue. Sabrina occupied the petitioner's table in a demure gray dress, a tissue folded like strategy between her fingers. Her attorney, Mr. Kincaid, had the kind of tan that seemed to be permanent, and the voice of a man who enjoyed telling people what they could not do. All rise. Wood creaked. Rubber soles scuffed. When they sat, paper began its quiet chorus. Mr. Kincaid opened with concern lacquered onto condescension. Your Honor, this is not about money. It is about capacity. Mrs. Alvarez's abrupt disappearance, the severing of contact with family, the establishment of a secret trust. These are the hallmarks of erratic behavior in a vulnerable senior. We seek temporary conservatorship to protect her, and by extension the public interest involved in a large lottery award. Marta watched him separate sentences from context the way a butcher separates bone from meat efficiently for a price. He displayed a printout of the gossip article with the wedding photo and slid it to the clerk with the carefulness of a man handing over evidence of a crime. Miss Rowan rose without theatricality. Your Honor, a woman who is harassed publicly, doxxed, and threatened is not erratic for securing privacy. She is prudent. We will show messages from Miss Alvarez's daughter-in-law threatening her privacy and implying pursuit invoices for a locksmith hired to change the locks on the home where Miss Alvarez resided, and witness testimony describing the precipitating event, the petitioner packing Miss Alvarez's belongings and ordering her out after a mistaken belief about the ownership of lottery proceeds. Judge Patel's gaze slid from one table to the other like a level. "We will hear witnesses," she said. Mr. Kincaid called Sabrina first. She walked like someone who had rehearsed not walking too fast. On the stand, she twisted the tissue into something that no longer resembled fabric. "I love Marta," she began, eyes shining in a way that read well in the rear benches. "We had a misunderstanding about the tickets, yes. But after that, she shut us out. She turned off her phone. She left the state. I feared for her safety and her decision-making." Miss Rowan's cross-cut carefully as if removing a splinter. "Miss Stone," Thornton Sabrina corrected. "I kept my maiden name professionally." "Miss Stone." Miss Rowan repeated unbothered. "Did you or did you not arrange for the locks of your residence to be changed on the day Miss Alvarez left?" Sabrina blinked. "We were considering a security upgrade." "An upgrade," Miss Rowan said, sliding an invoice across the rail that coincided with Miss Alvarez's exit. "Did you intend for Miss Alvarez to be unable to re-enter her room?" "We thought space would be healthy," Sabrina said, the first crack appearing at the edge of a smile that had been described as photogenic in more than one comment section. "Space is different from exile," Miss Rowan said. "One more question, did you send this text?" She read, not looking at her paper. "You think this buys you dignity? Enjoy your privacy for now." Sabrina's eyes widened. That could have been anyone. "The number is yours," Miss Rowan said evenly. "Registered to your carrier, confirmed by subpoena. No further questions." Ethan went next. He stood with both hands on the rail of the witness box like a man steadying a boat. His voice wobbled once and then decided against it. He described the morning in the kitchen, the manicured hands, ripping fabric the locksmith called the silence that tasted like shame. He did not dramatize. The facts did it for him. Mr. Kincaid tried to make him complicit. "Isn't it true, Mr. Alvarez, that you were under financial stress and that your mother contributed to your home's down payment? Isn't it possible your testimony is influenced by financial dependence?" Ethan let the accusation pass through him like weather. "I was under stress," he said, "and my mother sold her house to help us. That's precisely why I'm here to say I watched my wife treat the person who helped us as disposable. I stood there and let it happen. I won't do that twice." Elise followed. Where Ethan held the rail, she placed her hands flat and still. "I am a trauma surgeon," she told the court. "I evaluate capacity under pressure. My mother is competent. She is measured. She is understandably cautious after being threatened and publicly exposed." Mr. Kincaid tried a different door. "Doctor, you're not licensed in this state. Your medical opinion is not binding." "It's also not a medical opinion," Elise said. "It's informed observation. And as a daughter, my mother knows what day it is, what assets she controls, and she signs documents after reading them. That's more than I can say for some hospital administrators." A murmur ghosted the benches. Judge Patel allowed herself the smallest ghost of a smile. "Let's keep it narrow," she said. Finally, Miss Rowan called Marta. The bailiff held up a Bible. Marta chose the affirmation. She promised to tell the truth and felt how simple the promise could be when you'd been practicing. "Miss Alvarez," Miss Rowan said gently, "why did you leave the state?" "Because someone changed the locks on the place where I kept my toothbrush," Marta said. A flicker of amusement crossed the judge's face before Marta continued. "And because within 24 hours of a private family dispute, strangers were calling me by my first name and asking for comment. I did not trust that my privacy would be respected if I stayed. I sought quiet. I hired counsel. I created a trust because professionals told me it was wise." "Did you cut off contact with your son?" "I told him I needed time," Marta said. "Silence and severing are different species." Mr. Kincaid's cross was a study in tone respectful enough to pass, edged enough to scratch. "Miss Alvarez, do you often buy 2 tickets?" "Every week. One for me, one for them. And when you realized yours had larger value, did you intentionally conceal that information to test your family?" "I chose not to wake 2 adults at midnight with news that would change the smell of the house," Marta said. "In the morning, I shared the truth. If my quiet revealed something, I did not make it. I just stopped covering it with noise." "Would you characterize your decision to leave as impulsive?" "I packed a bag, booked a room, and called a cab," Marta said. "Impulses usually don't include receipts." "Do you intend to share your winnings with your family?" Miss Rowan rose. "Objection. Relevance." Sustained, Judge Patel said, not looking up from her notes. "This is a capacity hearing council, not a budgeting session." Mr. Kincaid tried one more path. "Miss Alvarez, do you acknowledge that at 67 you are part of a vulnerable population?" Marta looked toward the gallery, where gray hair gleamed like quiet badges. "Age is not an illness," she said. "It is a county you move into whether you like the taxes or not. I am not fragile. I am careful." When the testimony closed, papers shushed from stacks to piles. Judge Patel called a recess and the room exhaled at once. In the hallway, a reporter lobbed a question that bounced off the bailiff's warning like a tennis ball off a wall. Miss Rowan guided Marta into a small conference room and shut the door with the clean sound of competence. You were excellent, she said simply. Elise kissed the top of Marta's head like she might a patient who had made it through a hard procedure. Back on the record, the judge leaned forward as if gravity had shifted her interest an inch. I have reviewed the petition, the exhibits, and the testimony, she said. What I see is not incapacity. I see a woman who took reasonable steps to protect herself after being ostracized by the very people now claiming concern. I see a petitioner whose messages undermine her own narrative of benevolence. I see, in short, a family dispute with a financial backdrop clothed in the language of guardianship. Her gaze found Sabrina. Conservatorship is an extreme remedy. It is not a tool for leverage in a fight over winnings. The petition is denied. Additionally, given the text messages entered into evidence and the media leaks, this court issues a temporary protective order directing the petitioner to cease direct contact outside counsel and to refrain from third-party harassment. Further frivolous filings may result in sanctions. The gavel was ceremonial, a small thud that sounded like closure choosing to be polite. The bailiff called the next case. People stood and sat and shuffled the business of justice, swallowing one story to make room for another. In the hallway, Sabrina stood rigid, the tissue now a string. For a second, their eyes met. Marta saw calculation, then the instant hailstorm of embarrassment that follows public loss. Sabrina looked away first. Mr. Kincaid was already talking to her in a tone that said retainer more than remorse. Ethan found Marta with the face of a man who had run a race he had needed to run for years. He started to speak. Marta put a hand on his forearm. Not here, she said. Let the walls have the least of us. They left by the same side door, past the lemon cleaner, past a bulletin board, with a bent flyer for a legal aid clinic. Outside, the autumn sun made an honest attempt at warmth. A breeze flipped a few leaves across the concrete like modest confetti for those who needed it. Back at the hotel, Miss Rowan briefed them on next moves. The main suit claiming some shared right to the winnings is weak, she said. Expect a settlement offer dressed up as reconciliation. My advice: do not pay for quiet. It never lasts. Agreed, Marta said. She was surprised at how quickly the word came. Boundaries had been slow lessons in youth. Here they seemed to arrive ready to be written in ink. Ethan sat at the end of the sofa as if he asked permission to occupy the cushion. Mom, he said, and his voice tripped once. Thank you for letting me testify. You weren't a favor, Marta said. You were a fact. He nodded, wiped his face with the heel of his hand, then caught himself and laughed once at the gesture. You always told me to use a handkerchief. I always told you to use a clean one, Marta said. They both smiled a small, cautious truce. Elise ordered soup because that's what people do when life has made big noises. They choose something warm and repetitive. When it arrived, Marta ate with ordinary appetite. Between spoonfuls, she signed one more document. Miss Rowan slid across the table a consent for the firm to pursue a protective order extension if necessary. She signed with the same pen she'd used for the trust. It felt less like defense and more like design. By evening, the headlines softened a degree. Court rejects conservatorship bid. Commenters pivoted to other outrage. Sabrina's social accounts went quiet or private. Miss Rowan texted a single sentence Marta read 3 times. You held the line. Marta set the phone down and discovered she didn't need to read it again to keep it. When the room finally went quiet, Elise in the shower. Ethan on a call arranging a couch to sleep on at a friend's. Marta stood at the window and looked at the city lights. She thought of the locksmith's invoice and evidenced the judge's voice when she said extreme remedy, the way Sabrina's tissue had become string. She thought of the moment on the stand when she had said age is not an illness and meant it all the way to her heels. Her phone buzzed once more. A number she didn't recognize. The message was short. We can make this all go away for a reasonable figure. No signature. She turned the screen off and placed the phone face down. The door of the hotel room had a good lock. She turned it and heard the interior click sure and practical. Not the sound of shutting people out, she thought. The sound of choosing who comes in. In the morning, they would meet Miss Rowan again. There would be motions and responses, perhaps one last flare from the fire Sabrina had stoked. But the hinge that had turned in Marta weeks ago no longer squeaked. The day the door stayed shut had taught her what it swung on. She got into bed, pulled the cover to her collarbone, and spoke a sentence to the dark that did not require the dark to answer. I am not what they decide I am, she said. I decide, and when I can't, I choose who helps. The room did not applaud. It held. That was enough. The anonymous text, we can make this all go away for a reasonable figure, never received a reply. Miss Rowan did the answering for them the next morning with a letter that quoted the judge attached, the protective order, and closed with a sentence so crisp it felt like a door, my client will not purchase quiet. 2 weeks passed. Mr. Kincaid called to float concepts. Non-disparagement, confidentiality, a modest contribution to the marital estate to restore harmony. Miss Rowan's mouth did not move, but her voice smiled. Harmony is not for sale, counsel. If your client persists, we'll seek sanctions. By the end of that week, a new filing appeared, this one not in court, but with the clerk who receives attorney withdrawals. Mr. Kincaid was out. A rumor reached them through the grapevine that Sabrina had left town for a reset. Her social accounts went private. The gossip segment that had once framed her with soft focus moved on to a city council scandal. Even outrage needs new oxygen. Ethan's separation turned into divorce without theatrics. He texted Marta a photo of the signed decree and then unprompted a photo of the house key he was returning to the landlord. Letting it go, he wrote, "It's just walls." Marta typed back, "Good. Build the ones that matter." The lottery commission wired funds to the trust. Numbers appeared that didn't look like money so much as math. Marta sat with the statements not to admire them, but to remind herself they were tools, not weather. Then she and Miss Rowan spent a long afternoon in a conference room drafting something Marta had not allowed herself to imagine when she was sleeping on a fold-out in Elise's office, a plan. The first decision was not where to live, but how to live. "I'm not going to hand out repairs," Marta said. "I'm going to fund beginnings." They created the Doorways Fund, small precise grants for late-life restarts. Seniors pushed to the margins. Single parents who needed first month's rent, women disentangling from financial abuse. The fund would cover practical things nobody donates for because they aren't pretty locksmith invoices. P.O. boxes, prepaid phones, first legal consults. "Your underwriting hinges," Elise said, reading the draft mission. "Exactly," Marta said. She bought a modest, bright apartment 10 blocks from Elise. Mornings fog threaded the window like a gray ribbon. Afternoons light pooled on the floorboards as if the day itself were capable of resting. She learned the names of the clerks at the corner market, the barista who tamped espresso like a percussionist, the neighbor with a yappy terrier named Alfred who greeted everyone as if announcing a court arrival. The door had a heavy deadbolt. The first night she turned it and felt a familiar click. Not the sound of shutting anyone out, the sound of choosing who came in. Ethan arrived to help assemble a bookshelf he insisted on buying. They built it like a treaty measure, twice speak, once laugh when the Allen wrench slipped. Over bowls of soup Elise had set on the counter without asking, he cleared his throat. "About money," he said. "I'm not writing checks to correct character," Marta said gently. "Yours or mine. But I am investing in futures." He lifted his eyes. "I didn't come to ask." "I know," she said. "That's why this works." She handed him an envelope. Inside documents for a small educational trust for any children he might someday have, and a letter in Marta's hand that was not flowery, just exact what she hoped for him, what she would and would not do where love ended and enabling began. He read it, blinked hard, and put the letter back in the envelope as if it contained something that could evaporate. "Thank you," he said, voice steady. "I'll earn the rest with how I live." "Good," Marta said. "Let that be our currency." Time did what it always does when nobody's watching it. It hurried and healed in uneven measures. The Doorways Fund made its first grants. A widower in his 70s left a predatory roommate and moved into a studio lined with well-loved paperbacks. A grandmother secured a mailbox that wasn't at her daughter's address. A woman Marta never met sent a photo of a new lock and 4 words, "It clicks for me now." Elise took 2 weeks off and, to everyone's surprise, actually rested. She and Marta spent a Saturday at a tiny museum where a docent in a cardigan talked about landscapes with a seriousness that made Marta want to pick up a pencil again. On Sundays, they walked the waterfront and named boats out loud, as if christening them Second Chance Boundaries Clarity. "That tug is you," Elise said once. "Sturdy, unfancy, doing the real work." "That yacht is not me," Marta said. They both laughed. Sabrina sent one more message through council, a mutual closure proposal wrapped around a number that would have seemed astronomical to the version of Marta who once clipped coupons at the kitchen table. Marta slid the paper back across to Miss Rowan. "The price of sleeping well is higher," she said. Miss Rowan nodded and sent 2 sentences that closed the loop without reopening the wound. On an ordinary weekday, Marta took a bus to the park and sat on a bench with a thermos of tea. She noticed another woman her age sitting too upright as if her spine were taking attendance. The woman's hands twisted a tissue into a ribbon. The gesture was so familiar, Sabrina's courtroom talisman multiplied across lives, that Marta felt an ache like déjà vu. "Beautiful view," Marta offered, not a demand for agreement, only a place to rest words. The woman half smiled. "It should be," she said. "I'm not seeing it today." They shared a quiet you can only share with someone who understands that quiet isn't the absence of noise, it's the presence of permission. After a while, the woman said, "My husband left last month, 41 years. She laughed once, a sound with no joy in it. "I don't know the language for life now." Marta poured tea into the spare lid cup and handed it over. "Start with small nouns," she said. "Keys, bed, door, then bigger ones. Choice, safety, enough." The woman looked at the cup, then at Marta. "Does it get less terrifying?" "It gets more yours," Marta said. She pulled a small card from her bag and held it out. Doorways Fund, a phone number that wasn't Marta's, and an email that belonged to someone paid to answer. Practical help, she said. Nothing fancy. Just the kinds of things that make a hinge move. The woman took the card the way you take a breath when you've been underwater too long. Thank you, she said, for not telling me to be grateful. You will be, Marta said, for yourself, later. That evening, Elise and Ethan came by with groceries and a cake they insisted was not a celebration, just a dessert that knows its worth. They ate on mismatched plates, after they stood on the tiny balcony and watched the fog fold back the city like a page. Ethan rested his arms on the rail. I'm getting better at hearing locks, he said. So am I, Marta answered. Inside ones. She thought of the hinge that had turned in a hotel room weeks ago and kept turning through hearings and headlines, through signatures and refusals, through soup and letters and apricots, and the heavy, honest click of a deadbolt. Money had not made her someone else. It had given her enough quiet to hear who she had been all along. When they left, she washed the plates and set them to dry. She turned the lock. It clicked firm as a promise. Then she made tea and sat at the small table by the window where the last light thinned into evening and wrote 3 words on a clean page. Keep the door. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.